All right.
Hey, Youth Worker Nation, this is Doug Edwards with Youth Worker on Fire, and today I have a very special lady with me. This lady was not a lady when I first met her. She was a middle school student, and her name is Breah Croak Hooper. She's married now. That's where the Hooper came from, okay? And so I am excited for you to hear about her story and our story together in life and where life has taken her, because it's been a long time since I saw her. Showed up at Media Production here where I do a lot of these podcasts. And she said, Doug Edwards, is that you? And I couldn't believe it was her. And so, Breah, it's great to have you today.
Well, thank you. I'm excited. I'm excited to just talk to you again.
That's what I'm excited about too. And because we haven't sat down in years, but I'm going to give a little bit of history, what I remember, then I'm going to let you take it from there and you kind of fill in the blanks and catch us up to date with your family, okay? But what I remember is we met in middle school. When you were in middle school, I wasn't in middle school. You're much younger than me. And I was youth pastor, and we did some trips together. We went to some camps together. I don't remember if you did a sled retreat with us, but I think you did.
I did.
Yes. I thought so. Mm-hmm. And then high school, I think you're in another youth program for a while, but you did the incredible trip of all trips that we did at that time, which was our Guatemala trip. You worked in the garbage dump ministry. We had one day in garbage dump ministry, I tell people, in Guatemala City is equal to 2 weeks, 2 months somewhere else. And then we were up with 40,000 Mayan Indians up in St. John's District. Comitán was the city, which who does that? Who gets to be with Mayan Indians from the United States? Not many of us. Yeah. And then you reminded me the other day that you were with Bradley Blake, and he got his entourage together, which after graduation, he said, Breah, you're going hiking with us to the Appalachian Trail, and Coach Clark Blake, his dad, which he's famous for, the Appalachian Trail and hiking and things like that, took you guys, you stayed at your grandparents' place. Yep. And so, Breah, you got a couple of kids now.
I do.
That's amazing. You're married to a great husband, from my understanding. I haven't met him yet, but I know you. He's got to be a great man. And so that's where I am to this point, except that you're a teacher, and that's where I saw you at this high school here. Could not believe you're in town and how I missed you all this time with all the times I'm on campus. But I come straight to media production, and that's why I miss a lot of people now. So catch us up to date. Give me, your life story, fill in the blanks, and tell us where you are now.
Okay. The reason you miss me on campus is because I'm in a self-contained unit. I work with children, students from freshman to age 22.
Okay.
Or have an intellectual disability, or they're autistic. And so we stay in our room and we get a lot of stuff. I have another teacher that we work with, and we get a lot of stuff done in our room, but we get out of campus a lot because it's mainly our program's about inclusion. So we take them out in the community. We take them to the grocery store, and they learn how to go grocery shopping. So not only we're in our room when we're here, but we're off campus a lot. So that's why I haven't run into you. So there's that, and I've only been teaching for 2 years. We moved back from Denver 3.5 years ago.
One of my favorite places.
Mine too. Yeah, yes. That's where my children were born, and my husband's from there.
Amazing.
So we actually moved back because I wanted my kids to have a small town kind of experience like I did. Mm-hmm. And they've heard so many stories about my youth group days. I still bring them up. I think I was telling you one or two the other day.
Yes. But
it was such an impact. And now they're involved in the youth group, and they're in FCA. And it's really beautiful to see how it's come full circle.
Yeah, because you were part of all those things, and they were such a big part of this school and the community, the youth program, as well as the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, is historic here at this particular school. I won't say the name of the school because there's all this controversy when it comes to those sort of things on a campus. And, of course, the way they're done are much different because of laws and different things like that. But that was your history here.
It was my growing up.
Yeah.
And another trip that I went on with you was the Hurricane Andrew when we went down south.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah. And I do remember you in those pictures.
Yes. And it's so funny because when I first started last year teaching, I ran into one of the teachers who was actually my teacher at the time. I don't know if I can say his name.
Yes, you can.
Mr. Curtis.
Oh yeah, because Mr. Curtis,
Yeah.
he's a hero of mine. I love that guy, and we don't spend enough time together.
Yeah.
Talk to me.
So I ran into him. He goes, "Oh my gosh!" Not only did he remember me as a student, but he said, "I just remember when we went down with Doug after the hurricane." And those are like, you're a teenager. There's lots of things that you forget over the years as you get older. And I thought, that's right. And I went and whipped out the pictures. But so it's kind of funny to come back after all these years and run into him and be reminded. But that was also, besides Guatemala, a really life-changing thing that you provided for me to attend.
I got to give credit to Jason Magus, who you knew if you went on that trip, because Magus is the one who came to my house. Do you know that story?
No.
He knocked on my door on my day off. Thursday was my day off. We actually came into the church saying, we're going to have a day off, and it's going to be Thursday, blah, blah, blah. And so on a Thursday, he comes to the house and knocks on my door because at Club, which we called our student ministry, he said, "Oh, Doug," he said, "Hurricane Andrew, he says, I'm from Miami. These are my friends down there. We've got to go help them." And I said, okay, I'll look into it. I'm thinking by the summer we'll get down there or something and we'll do some after work or something like that. And so he knocks on my door that Thursday after the Monday and says, "Hey, I just want to let you know I announced at the school Labor Day weekend that you're taking us to Miami to help with Hurricane Andrew." I said, "What?"
That sounds like
I said, "I'm going to do. Well, your life is over, man." And so we went to church. I called my buddy in Key Biscayne, Florida, Kent Keller, who was youth pastor at Key Biscayne Presbyterian. I said, "Kent, we need a place to stay." I said, "I know you went through the hurricane, but can we stay at the church? One of my students has announced this," and he says, "Can't you wait?" He said, "I went through the hurricane too." I said, "Kent, whether you give us a place to stay or not, we're coming because the train is rolling, and so we can't stop it. We're coming."
That's great.
And he said, "No, we'll work it out then." And we stayed at Key Biscayne Presbyterian. That's how we went. It wasn't because I was the great hero. Jason Magus pushed all the buttons. He said, "Hey, man, you're it."
I can see that.
Yeah. So tell us about your experience on that trip.
Oh, well, it was amazing. It was hot. It was
Very hot.
rough. I could not believe the damage. It really put it in perspective. And you see the news, especially as a young high schooler, you see the news and you think, it's too bad for them.
Yeah.
You really do. You don't have that really heart yet to understand or that maturity. At least I didn't.
None of us did.
It was
Even the adults didn't.
It was devastating, and it changes your perspective so much for when you come home. It's just like going on a missions trip. It
was a missions trip.
Yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. You're right. It was a quick but together missions trip, but you're so gifted yourself when you do those trips. It's almost like you were the one who got the present.
Yes. And tell me why you feel that way. What year in school were you?
That was actually my senior year. That was, I think, junior.
So
senior
is
year.
that before, or wasn't your senior year you also went to Guatemala?
I don't quite remember. I know I was at least a junior or senior.
Yeah, you were a junior or senior, that was for sure. And because we went in the fall there, so it's possible that spring you could have gone with us, but it could have been a year later. I don't remember the year exactly.
I do remember. I have this funny memory. I heard about the Guatemala trip at lunch. I was sitting with Bradley Blake, and I think
there's a theme there. Bradley Blake's name keeps showing up, right?
He and I were good friends, and Jeremy Cox, and probably like Brad. And we were talking, and I heard that you were
right?
Yes, and I heard that you were doing a trip to Guatemala. And you're right. At that time, I was going to another youth group, but I always felt welcomed.
Absolutely.
To go back and forth, which was nice because I didn't really have my family didn't have like a real tight church home. We went, but it wasn't like, I just felt like the door was always open with you.
Yeah.
And I remember I had this great distinct memory of hearing about it and going to the front office, literally, and asking the secretary, because back then you had to ask to use the phone. You didn't have a cell phone.
Yeah, right.
And asking, could I call home? And she wanted to know why. And I said, I need to ask my mom if I can go on this trip I just heard about. Called my mom, and she said, well, did you ask Doug? And I said, no. Got in touch with you, and I think you guys were leaving literally within like 4 or 5 days.
We were.
And
I mean, I remember now. I forgot. I didn't know how long, but I knew it was a short period of time. I remember that now that you tell me, and I was shocked that you were calling.
Yes, and you were like, come on. It was, you were like, come on.
You and Dana Dixon.
The only 2 girls.
That's right.
And you said, you guys have to wear dresses, not shorts. Makeup was out the window. I mean, it was like rocked my world, but it was worth it. And you let me go, and it literally changed my life.
And you know what? I'm going to throw you in the bus a little bit. I do that with everybody. And that was, I remember the middle school trip that we did a camp.
Uh-huh.
And I want to go back and hear about SLED, but I'm ADD, so we go backwards and forwards. We hope that people that edit straighten me out. And so, but I remember, and I'm sure it was you, that I remember taking you on this middle school camp up at Southwinds Camp. Mm-hmm. And the first thing I remember is before we even got to the night, you were in the cabin and you jumped out the window. Do you remember that?
No.
Yes, you did.
That was not me, man.
Yes, it was. It was you.
Why would I do that?
Because you're very active.
I'm so
It was
sorry.
nothing bad. No, there's nothing bad about it.
Was there snow? I jumped up the...
No. This is Ocala Forest. This is up there.
Oh.
Yeah. You remember that one?
No.
It was
I
a
do
fun
remember
one.
the camp, but I don't remember jumping out.
It was great.
I believe you.
I don't. That was not negative to me. That was like, oh my gosh, this girl has got energy coming out.
I don't know why you let me go on anything.
Because you were one of the better people I've ever known. In spite of those things. So and it shows up because of what you're saying about that energy and that desire. And your desire was to be all you could be and to do all you could do, and that's why you went to Andrew, and that's why you went to Guatemala. You're the only person I remember that said, you're going on this Guatemala trip. Can I go? The rest of them were going, you need to go on this Guatemala trip, and here's what's going to happen, and here's what the benefits. And you're the person calling me up. So that's that same energy person. So I didn't see those things as negative. I saw them as, and we see those. You probably see that in students now. You see certain things that some people call negative, and you go, oh, no. Mm-hmm. There's determination here. Mm-hmm. There's energy here because that's who you are. So keep going. Tell me about where you're on Guatemala, right? At this point.
Yeah. Well, yep. Did Guatemala? No, both. Yeah, I think we're on both.
Well, either way you want to start because we got lots to talk about both of those. Go ahead.
Andrew, obviously, like I mentioned, was my first like real look, like tangible. Could see it in front of my face. Look at devastation and destruction and how my little cushy world that I, take for granted. That was my first taste of that.
It looked like a bomb had gone off.
It did. It really did.
And tell me, give me at least 2 stories from Andrew that you, if not 2, give me the one that just is etched in your brain. It can be a scene, it could be what you saw, or it could be an action or people that you met. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know what it is.
Well, I guess I just vividly see we were in a group and we were in someone's backyard and their roof was completely gone. And then the walls were gone. You saw right through to like a back bathroom. Mm. And we had cases of water. Mm-hmm. For us and then to hand out too.
Yes.
And we were handing some out to other neighbors who were just kind of trying to get up and down the street. And it was so sad to me. I just didn't know what to do. I remember feeling so bad for them. Mm-hmm. And I also remember thinking, but I get to go home and guilt over that. Mm-hmm. But glad I could be there. But just like the immense, like, I get to go home and they have to stay. And I did. I got back home and it was still on the news for weeks and power was still out, kind of like the current situation with Puerto Rico. And it was like, so I guess I don't really have a story per se, but I just remember standing in that backyard.
No, that's a story.
And just seeing to that person's bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it wasn't like, it was a nice, I mean, there was debris that was blocking the hallway to the bathroom. It was just... And there's this selfish part of you too, is like, I'm excited to go home and take a shower.
Yes.
You feel that turmoil. And I'm glad I felt it. Like it was a good thing to feel at that age. It was important for me to have that like realization.
Well, and you're one of those people that
thank
soak
you for
those
that.
things in. Oh,
No, really, thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for going. And also, thank you, Jason Magus, for pushing the buttons, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I wish I could take the credit. There's a lot of things I can't take credit for. I wish I could.
But,
Because I had these people that just,
know,
they were forces. And what I love to do with people's forces that are good is I just like to tag on, okay, well, let's direct that force. We got a force, so let's direct it. And that's what I got to do, just direct what he was doing,
but if there wasn't you to direct it, honestly, I that God putting those pieces together was great.
Yeah, well, you're gracious there. I thank you. But here's the deal. You're the type of person that always takes those things to other levels, and that's where we're going to Guatemala now. Let's talk about Guatemala. You got on that trip, and I don't remember if it was the first day or the last day that we went to the garbage dump. We usually either did it the first day or the last couple of days.
It was early on. It must have been the first day.
Before we got up to the mountains.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. Now, there's like 6,000 people in Guatemala. Correct me if you're the teacher if I say words wrong, because I talk too fast sometimes. Guatemala City dump. And the reason we started going to the dump, by the way, because I don't know when I ever will say these things again. I saw the reason we ended up there, Breah, was because I saw on television before we left for Guatemala. I'd been a few times. I'd been no times. It was before, so you were about number 3 or 4. I only went 6 times on that one. We did a lot of missions trips. That particular one for student ministry, only 6 times. And you were either 4 or 5. You're number 4. I'm sure it was 3 or 4. And I saw Manila had this city dump ministry on like 2020 or NBC News or whatever it was. And there's like 20,000. And so when we were going on this trip, I said, you know what, I will take students if we can go to the Guatemala City dump ministry and work there. I want to see it. So my first trip was a go-see trip, and we went there. And here's what Lisbeth Piedrasanta said. She was the one in charge of it. Master's degree in sociology from the States, but a Guatemalan. She said, how did you find us? I said, I don't know. I just asked to go to the Guatemala City dump ministry. She said, no one knows about us. We just started this 6 months before or something like that the first time I'd been down. And I said, that was my ignorance. I just said, I just took for granted there was one. And she told her story. So we're here. You're there. Tell me what you remember.
Oh, gosh. This is funny because this coming Sunday, my family and I are going to a meeting after church to go to Guatemala City on a missions trip. This is how, when I say full circle, this is how full circle it's come. I remember you all talking to us saying, it's a dump. There's a lot of trash. We've heard it smells very bad. You prepared us in the way you could. That was so tremendously sad and overwhelming, yet those people, I remember that their houses were built out of cardboard walls, cereal boxes, that were just pushed together, and just seas of trash. Like, literally, I would love if you could attach a clip of the video, if I could find mine. Just literally, as far as you could see, trash and debris. And you would see these structures that almost looked like it was a pile of garbage, but it was someone's home. And I couldn't believe it. And the way they had, actually put together these walls was pretty creative and genius. But the memory that I have that stands out to me the most is when we had all the children that we could find come, and there was an epidemic of head lice. And so I was, again, being a teenage girl, and, I didn't like germs. I didn't want anything to do with that. Had you told me in advance, maybe I wouldn't have called you.
Right. Exactly.
But, I don't know. God really just put this sense of grace in my heart and all the other students. And we almost had like an assembly line. And so some of the adults and some of the students would wash the children's hair with the lice shampoo.
Mm-hmm.
And in all honesty, had you told me, I probably wouldn't have gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad I didn't know. And it put me out of my comfort zone, but it didn't gross me out. It didn't make me not want to do it. There was God was like, Breah, you got this. You got this. And I remember just combing their beautiful black hair and with these combs and like hoping they weren't going to get head lice again. Just praying, like I hope, but knowing
They were.
Yeah. And I just was thinking, I want this treatment to last as long as possible, so they're not itchy. And then later that evening, we took a group into the city, out of the dump. I don't know how many, but we took them to a Dairy Queen or an ice cream shop.
And by the way, out of all those trips, that was the only time we did that.
Really?
Yes.
It's even now with having been a preschool teacher and working here, I still have to do lice checks. And I'm like, I got this. I still got this. They're like, other people are like, I don't want to do it. I'm like, I got you. It didn't faze me. But
That's right.
But yeah, and we took this trip into the city, and we took a couple of them to, I don't know, it probably wasn't a Dairy Queen. I doubt that. But it was an ice cream store. And I remember it was probably the lady that you mentioned. She came with us.
It was.
And she translated that I think it was all of them, or maybe it was the majority, had never had ice cream. And there's a picture I have, and again, I'm sorry, I can't find it. All our stuff's in boxes right now. But there's a picture of myself with these kids, and there's this one little boy, and he's got his tongue out, and he's licking the ice cream cone, and he is almost like in shock that it's cold. Because they don't have refrigerators. They don't have any ice available to them. And
they
it's cold, and it tastes yummy, and yeah, there's those two for the dump. Those two stories definitely just are my favorite.
Well, and let me tell you, I so was looking forward to this story, and the reason I was looking forward to it is now we're going to throw the guys under the bus. Not one of our guys would touch those kids' heads, but you and Dana jumped in, and I believe you were either. You were Miss Cheerleader, I think, at that time. I think you were homecoming or prom queen, something, all that stuff, and which are stupid. Not things. Well, and I don't think they're stupid. They're high school things, but they put you on pedestals that later in life. Okay, but. The thing that stood out was here I've got these tough guys, and these are tough guys. These are sports guys and high intellect guys. They were all of that and a lot more in a bag of beans. You know all that.
Yes, yeah.
And but they're because they were so smart, they're going, oh no. And they wouldn't touch them. And here are the two pretty girls and sweet girls you dove in because they said, listen, we're going to give you special shampoo afterwards. Do you remember this? And you go wash your hair with this anti-lice shampoo that kills lice or whatever. And I'm going, oh, what have I done to these girls? What have I done? And I said to you, Breah, why would you do this? And you said, because my mom would do this.
Did I really?
Yes, you did. You said this is exactly what she would do.
Oh,
so you had seen that modeled to you somewhere.
I'll have to tell her that.
You'll have to tell her that. That's right. You saw it. You know what? We model stuff to people. People hear our words, but if we won't model it, they won't follow it. Some will, but most of them won't. They got to see it modeled. And that's what I remember. And that was one of the most huge stories. We had some incredible stories for all these mission trips. We did many years of them, of different types, not just Guatemala. Guatemala was the shortest stint. It was the most intensive, though.
It was.
So, but then we went to the mountains. We did that. Now we're in with the Mayans. What do you remember about being up in the village? We're almost 7,800 feet high in the Guatemala mountains. This is cowboy area. This is rustic. We got pretty nice digs to sleep in at this point, better than the first years, but still very rustic. and tell us what you remember about being up in the village.
Oh, well, it was a long drive.
8 hours. 8 hours from Guatemala City.
Very long drive. Bumpy road, dirt road. I think, I hope I'm getting this right, but I think when we got there, the village had a meal for us in the church. And I remember you saying, like, you need to eat everything that they give you. Like, you need to eat it. If you don't like it, you need to eat it.
And that was hard. Listen, that was hard for me too. The first time I went, the food was worse, and I was trying to hide my food. And I was the guy that knew we had to eat, and I was going, "Oh, I can't eat that stuff."
And talking about tough guys, I remember Jeremy Cox. I hope he doesn't get mad at me about this, but there was a fruit dessert, and it was like papaya or something. We weren't used to eating it often, and he just couldn't stomach it, and he just said, "You've got to eat this for me. You have got to eat this for me." So I did.
Well, let me tell you what. The only girl that comes close that I remember to being as tough as you is his wife on that trip before they were ever dating. Of course, she was in high school after you, and she actually passed out. She was so sick her first time, and she came back for a second year. I said, "I can't believe you came back." Yeah. So here, he's going to be mad at both of us. Throw him under the bus. Your wife's tougher than you, boy. Jeremy was tough. He's a good guy, though.
She's a great lady, too.
Yeah. But go ahead.
So I remember them being
But she didn't wash the lice out. She didn't do it. You and Dana got the award. Go ahead.
Thanks. Well, I remember our host family being in such tight quarters and being so gracious to us. Dana and I slept out in another room, and they cooked meals for us, and they were so thankful that we were there. And I know we worked on building the structure of that church, and that was great. But I have this one memory too from that trip. At the time, I had a job at Red Lobster, and I would save my money, and Red Lobster was across from the mall. So after I got my paycheck or whatever, I would sometimes go shopping, and I bought this headband. I thought it was so cool, right? And I remember this little girl kept touching it. It was leather, it was braided, and she kept touching it. And I can't remember how many days we were there. 2, maybe 2, 3.
You talking about up in the mountains? We're up there about 5 to 6 of the 10 days.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
See, that's how bad my memory is getting at my age.
Well, no, you got lots of water under the bridge. You have your own children. That's enough to take everybody's memory away. But you have your own.
This little girl liked this headband so much, and somewhere in the trip, I gave it to her, and she couldn't believe it. And again, that's where I got the present to give her something, and I wondered after we came back, I wonder if she's wearing it today. I wonder if she remembers us talking to her about Jesus and the things that we did, and we spent time with them.
Yeah.
I feel so fortunate in my life, and I think about them sometimes when God will give me these little nudges, really, Breah?
Yeah.
And so I still remember that little girl, what she looks like, and so that's a memory. And then the other one was the market, when we went to the market.
Day of the market, right. Yeah.
That was incredible.
Here was this village. You almost saw no Mayan Indians.
Right.
We were in the city. And then the day of the market, what did it look like?
Well, it was loud, and it was
packed.
It was chaos.
Yes.
Yeah, it was
all of a sudden, there's 40,000 Mayan Indians, and that's when you start to see a good chunk of them.
Yes.
Of the population.
And you're seeing, some of them are literally selling the same thing, a couple booths down, and they're all trying to get you to buy their stuff, and it was crazy. It was very intense. I guess that's the word for it. It was very intense, and their lifestyle is very hard. It was just dusty, and
most of them walked barefooted.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
But just lovely people.
Yeah.
And I wonder how that church structure is.
Oh, it's doing great. There was a whole thing about it, but it wasn't actually a church structure. It was a. Now we may have worked on the church with you guys, but I think it was the beginning of the missions where they actually had a school for them. It was a 2-story structure that the rocks were brought out of the river, up the river going through the mountain. And, I mean, they had to bring it up quite a big hill. And then we would wash those rocks off. But they would actually dig a earthquake-proof foundation that was like 20 feet deep. It was craziness.
Crazy.
And it was literally an earthquake-proof structure because tens of thousands of people had died in one of the worst earthquakes in Central American history in Guatemala. Years before, that's where a lot of student ministry there came out of before you were born, actually, because I knew some of the guys that actually went there during that. And started Mission Discovery and World Servants and different things like that. But that structure's still there.
Is it?
Because it's probably one of the ones that'll stay there, because of the way it was built. Yeah.
It was a great experience. It really, when we came back from that trip, you had all of us stand up in front of church and say something. And I don't remember, I think I've told you this story. I don't remember what I said. I remember praying, Lord, please just give me the words, because it was so intense and it was such a beautiful experience. And there was so much to say. And I don't remember what I said, but I remember those people. I remember those moments so well. And I am so grateful you said yes when I called you.
Absolutely. And I'm grateful that you went. And let's go in now. From there, you leave there. You tell us about your hike, your senior year. I want to hear about that. Tell me how it came about, and then.
Okay, so there was a kind of a group of us. We all ran around. Some of us were in different youth groups, and like myself, some of us went back and forth. But a lot of us were involved in FCA, and we were all usually in the same classes. We were kind of grouped that way, and I remember it this way. They might have a different story, but most kids after graduation go to the beach and get in some trouble. So I remember it this way, where our parents were like, nope, that's not happening. So we had to come up with something. So somehow Coach Blake was mentioning us going for a hike. And
Clark Blake is in another earlier episode. You can go see that one, and you'll get a lot of that history. Go ahead.
Yeah, such an influential person, and I was so fortunate to have a lot of teachers that were Christians like that and weren't afraid to share their faith in the classroom. It's a lot harder, I think, nowadays for teachers to do that, but he was one of them, and also being the FCA leader. But he said, well, why don't you guys go hike the Appalachian Trail? And then it came together because my parents had a mountain house in North Carolina.
Which I've been to. Very nice place, yeah.
Okay.
Fun place.
That's right. And so he helped us map it out, and we had 2 cars. And it was Jason Magus and Bradley Blake and Russ Curry and Angela Fort, and it was just a little motley crew. And back then we didn't have GPS, so we had to go over to Coach Blake's house, and he would say, this is the route you're going to take to get to the house. And then he coordinated where we were going to be dropped off to hike. And then we hiked through the woods, and then the plan was for us to whitewater raft back down to our cars. And we were good kids. So we get to the mountain house, and we have to find the grocery store. We have to figure out something to cook. And, it was kind of a motley crew of personalities. And so we start the hike, and Coach Blake has prepared us with, dried food and an outdoor shower that we would have to lay out in the sun, and water tablets. And we felt super prepared.
Yeah.
So, but we were just a bunch of dorks out there hiking. We did. Luckily, we all came back okay. But it was a great time. We ran across a rattlesnake, and the tough boys, tried to beat it with a stick till it scared them, and they ran. It was fun. It was very team building, and it was a great way to head off to college, because it was just, we're all Christians, so we did Bible studies at night. We would sign the logs of the other hikers on the AT trail that, would see as they came we would look at the ones who had come before us, and we'd look for Coach Blake on there. And it was just a real team building and fun memory. It was a great way to end our senior year. And then we all kind of dispersed and went off to college. Bradley actually went to Florida State with me, and so we kept in touch for a while.
Yeah, and I'd forgotten that you guys had stayed in touch up there a little bit, and I came up there a couple of times because Jason would invite me up, and he was rooming with some of those guys. I don't think I ever got to see you during those times. There's a couple of times that we came up, and so Florida. Tell me this. So catch us up to date with your family. You end up meeting this guy that's from Denver, and you end up living in Denver for a long time, and now you've got 2 children, and you talked about them going to student ministry and different things like that. So tell me what you would say to youth pastors in particularly about why they should stick with it. I mean, here's your life. Has it really impacted you into your adult life? And what would you say to those guys that, the average youth pastor lasts 18 months and he's gone, and some gone forever from student ministry, and because it's tough. It's a tough world. What would you say to encourage them that longevity matters?
It is so incredible that foundation, that solid foundation I got in my youth from my youth pastors that I could fall back on when I wasn't walking with Christ. And my husband as well, raised in the church, very involved youth pastors. And it just, I know it's hard, and I hate that it's hard for you to do that, but it has literally shaped the way I am raising my own children. I mean, so not only did you all influence me, I'm going to get teary. That's crazy.
It's okay. You made me tear up a couple times. So
not only did
it's only right.
influence, myself and how I would choose and sometimes difficult circumstances and what I needed to do as a college student, how I was going to react in certain situations. But it also, when I wasn't walking with the Lord, that foundation, that itch, that whisper of having accepted Christ was constant with me. So it guided me as I became older. It guided me towards finding a Christian husband. It guided me towards making sure that my children heard these cool stories, these fun stories, these impacting stories, not just from me. My husband has his own. And it also is one of, this sounds so silly, but it's also one of the factors about moving back to a small town where you're youth pastor. And I'm not dissing big towns at all.
Right.
But I would talk so much about it. And we went on this trip, and then we went down the Itchnatucky, and we went on sledding trips. And, it was just such a formidable part of my youth that was so positive and so Christ-like. And there were so many things that came from my youth pastor. I would get daily devotional books from, I forget the name of the organization, or I'm sorry, not daily, monthly, up to my senior year in college because of a form my youth pastor passed out one Wednesday night. And it would keep me on track. It was right what I needed to hear in my dorm room my sophomore year. There's just so many things that that guidance that was hidden in a bunch of fun. And it was, at the time you didn't know because you're just oh, this is really cool. Thank you, Doug, for putting this together. But it was this, you guys were on a mission. And it really just, I don't know how to say it except to say it. It gave me that solid rock to fall when I did fall. And then it also gave me the wisdom on how to be a parent at times.
Yeah.
Because I can go back to some of those, circumstances that my kids are going through. And I don't know how you deal with a room full of kids all going through different things like that. I just want to encourage their hearts. I really do. I was at my kids' youth group 3 Wednesday nights ago, it's hard. They're not paying attention. They're on their phones. They're looking around when it's time to pray. And I can see why they get discouraged. But they're listening. I mean, they are. A lot of them are.
Yeah, that's really good to hear. And as youth pastors, I know there's many times that, and by the way, we all fall. A great thing. Thank you for saying that, because all of us go through challenges to where we say, yeah, I know it's not right to do this here, but I'm going to go this way for a while. But there's things that pull us back, and God, no matter how good you are, no matter how small or how big that is, we all go through crisis of faith. Are we gonna follow this path, or are we gonna do something else? And we all fall away for a short time. Listen, the whole Bible is not full of these really sweet guys and girls. Right. It's really all full of guys that just really messed up, that God loved, and that they love God. And when they mess up, they go, and they come back, and He would love them. Now, was it all the stories that way? No. Were some extreme crisis and really messed up? Yes. Did they all end up with good stories at the end? No. But there was always a theme that God's love was bigger than our mistakes. His love's always bigger,
Absolutely.
Always bigger, always bigger. But what are any other stories that you'd like to tell about your family or?
Oh, they'd kill me.
Yeah, my family's the same. Well, listen, my family, they're supposed to have already been interviewed and stuff, and they're going, yeah, Dad,
No,
we'll do it. No.
No, there's really not a story.
Don't tell the story.
I guess there's not any stories. It kind of really bums me out that youth workers are down about I guess, without it being a story, I just want to reiterate, like, how they are so influential in a way that's not spoken to them enough. And I wish there was a way I could do that. So if there's any words of encouragement, it's like, you changed me, Doug. I mean, God has the glory.
Right.
But you and Coach Blake and having Christian friends that you influence. So not only did you provide me, but guidance, but you provided my peers guidance, which in essence gave me this support system. And then we went into college, and I still today, thanks to Facebook, can, check in with these people and see how they are. And so you gave me like a lifeboat even after I left with my friends. And
that is an awesome image.
Yeah, we're too selfish at that age to go up and have the words to say it.
Yeah.
And I wish we did. But you did. You sent me off after I left high school with a lifeboat of friends. And, I still speak to, sorry about that. I still speak to so many of them. And we've gone through trials. Some of us couldn't have children. There's been divorce and all this stuff. But we're still so many times talking about our high school days in youth group. We share stories, and we are like, do you remember when we went on this trip or that trip? And you did, and you gave it to my kids. You gave it to my children. So they're on fire to go every Wednesday night. They're on fire for Sunday. It's generational, even when it doesn't look like it in the moment.
It is awesome to see when you stay a while that you get to see the children you've helped raise their children. And I'm so old. I was saying it so long that I even got to help. Some people's kids were actually in the program, after, they grew up and had their children like you, and that is beneficial. And unless you stay in a place, it's not that everybody has to stay, and there's some places that are just too hard, and they don't have the environment to allow you to stay. We were just in a very unique situation, but there are those unique situations, and we're trying to create those for other churches through this podcast, and those things that they can create environments that will enrich their pastors, their youth pastors, their associates, those people that are getting hit, because they get hit first. Because if you can destroy the heads, then you can destroy the body, And so we do get hit. But things like the imagery you just gave me of the lifeboat, that is priceless. Lifeboat is exactly what it is, and it is for us. Here's what I learned from, we're talking about podcasts and business podcasts, that I started listening to a lot of business podcasts as well, and I wish I had them for student ministry when I was doing that full time. Now I'm a volunteer, but they would say this, and you said this you're talking about, you're still talking to your peers, some of those people from high school. If you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. And that's one that keeps coming up in leadership over and over and over. If you're the smartest person in the room, change rooms, because you need a room that's smarter than you to keep you growing. And you need people that are going to, Scripture says, iron sharpens iron. You need people to sharpen you that aren't exactly agreeing with you, but you'll bring each other. They need you, you need them to bring you to those places that you want to go in life. And so, Breah, that's amazing. I'm sure there's lots of other things that we could think of and go to. But give me a little word association, though. When you hear the word, when you hear the word middle school, what do you think of? Middle schooler.
Middle school. Drama.
Okay. Yeah. High school. You got several layers of high school.
Yeah, learning experience, full on. I know that's not one word, but in your face. Yeah. Learning. Like these moments, these decisions you're going to make, take them serious.
Yeah, lifetime decisions.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? We remember things from high school and middle school for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
I remember my middle school and high school days. Yeah. And they're so influential, and so and they're ingrained in a way that other memories aren't and can't be, because of growth, fast growth.
It is fast.
Yeah, and so family.
Oh gosh, blessed.
Yeah. 2 kids, a husband. Mm-hmm. How old are your kids again?
Well, I've got a 14-year-old who's going to be in high school next year.
Wow.
And I have a 6th grader who's 12. So I've got middle school and high school in my face
and a boy
again.
And boy and a girl. Oldest is a boy, right? Girl's
boy,
a little. Yeah. And so, future.
Exciting. I'm excited.
That's good. Yeah. Guatemala.
Life-changing.
What do you want for your kids in 5 years? I don't know. This is just random stuff I'm asking you. But you got kids. Is there something you thought of in 5 years for your kids that you hope happens? It's their choice. You can't change that. They've got to make a...
I'm very...
What do you hope happens in 5 years?
Well, they've already accepted Christ, so that's out of the way. That's good.
Exactly.
I know where they're going.
Yeah.
And they just got baptized 3 weeks ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
Just the normal things. You want them to be safe and graduate. And I hope that they can really find their path without too much difficulty. But 5 years down the road, I'll have one that's, hopefully be a freshman in college. I don't really have any plans for them. I have hopes, like, this is how I want you to turn out. And,
right.
Don't get arrested.
Right. There's certain things as parents we want that we didn't want when we were in high school. We didn't think of, right?
Right. So it's just the normal thing. I hope that they do, within the next 5 years, we can do a family mission trip. We're trying to work that out.
Yeah.
I hope that they can, I do hope that they will continue with their youth group and with their FCA, and definitely be that friend that I was blessed to have, being surrounded with those Christian friends. And they only know that their friends are Christians because they see them at youth group. And if there wasn't a youth group, they wouldn't know. They don't talk about that at middle school. They don't go, hey, you have Jesus in your heart. They don't, but they see each other at Wednesday nights because there's youth pastors.
Yes. Yeah.
And
why have these guys taken their life to become this? At least it says something to them about there must be something significant here, because these guys have traded a lot of money, possibly, for enough money so that they could share an incredible story and to generations, because that's what we're looking at. We're trying to, this podcast will go on far beyond my lifetime. That's what our hopes are, that it will feed people far beyond my lifetime and far beyond the next generation and the next generation's lifetimes. And there will be many other stories and podcasts and things like that, so that we continue with the faith. Billy Graham just died. The reason I'm here is because he was the first hire of the organization that brought me to Orlando called Youth for Christ. He was the first employee of now an international organization. And Billy's just gone to heaven, and his son is in charge of that ministry, plus Samaritan's Purse. And I want to tell you this too. Not only that, there's I want to remind Youth Worker Nation, you can go to Manna Nutrition to cure one child with $50. You can cure one child of severe acute malnutrition. That's where they no longer hunger, they're just dying. But in 6 weeks, with this 3 times a day, this thing called RUFT, which is a food source that they created through the UN years ago, and he has the least expensive. He was a missionary to Uganda. And so you can go listen to Mark Moore on one of my episodes. So you got Manna Nutrition. Those things can keep helping generations, student ministry, the stories you've told me. And let me tell you about Breah before we leave here, and we're out, okay, because you got to go teach some more and get out of here. But I don't see you. You're the same person. And that's one thing that I've always seen about you. You have consistently, when I've seen you around, and I've seen you in good and bad situations, been that person that even if you're upset, even if you are hurt or whatever, you have this composure of you still care about others.
Oh, thank you.
You still have this pleasantness, this kindness. You can't teach that. That's either part of your character or it's not. And so I want to thank you. I want to thank your parents and thank you for your decisions in life and those awesome trips, and for you calling. You went to 2 of the hardest trips I ever went on, which is Hurricane Andrew. And let me tell you what, it was beastly hot there. And the National Guard was there. And I will tell you this, when I say a bomb looked like a bomb went off, you went there, now you'll see all the growth is back and all that. And Homestead, which was the worst part of Andrew. And when we were there were no street signs. I had to have a guy from the area that actually took me through that before we took you guys, because he knew the streets by memory, because there were no trees left. The trees were gone. I remember one palm tree leaning up against the house that it hit, and there was a microwave tower that was literally, which is like massive metal and tall, that was twisted. We have a picture in front of. It was like a bomb, and you were there at that place. And then it was a hard trip. We slept on floors, and then we went out not knowing if we were going to get cold enough water ourselves for several days, and then to go to Guatemala in one of the most harsh Central American environments. And not at the easiest trip we went to. There was still a couple more trips before it got somewhat easier, and they got better conditions now. Still a cowboy deal. So you've been on some of those tough things with me, and some of the most glorious trips. I loved those trips, by the way. I loved producing them. They were hard. There were days that we went 48 hours without sleep before we left for the trips. Not you, but the staff.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so, I loved them so much because those retreats were condensed time. Mm-hmm. They did in 3 days, in 5 days, in 7 days, in 10 days, what it would take us 6 months or a year or 2 years to do emotionally, spiritually, and get to know each other. We did that in 3 to 10 days. Mm-hmm. And that's why I love retreats. That's why we often went, are they worth it? Should we do them? They're so expensive. And the answer is yes. They were worth every penny and more if we had to spend it. To me.
I agree. And if I thank you for that. And I'd like to tell you too, at the end of the day when we were all tired, you still gave a lesson about the Lord and you usually had somebody play music, you were still up to that. You must have been dog tired. I'm sure you were, but you were still giving of yourself to us. So I thank you for that.
Well, thank you, Breah. You're very kind. She's always been that way to me. Anyway, and to many other people. So listen, Youth Worker Nation, we're out. Breah, if they want to get you by email, can they do that? I don't want them, you giving your phone number out or anything like that, but is there an email that they could reach you if they want to write some things to you somewhere?
Yep.
Okay.
It's Breah, my first name, Breah, my middle name, Ray, R-A-E. So it's Breah Ray at AOL.com. Because I got that in college when AOL first
there
came
you
out.
go. There
it's
you
a
go.
Dinosaur, but I'm keeping it. So Breah Ray at AOL.com.
Breah Ray at AOL.com. There you go. You have it. And Youth Worker Nation, you can find us at youthworkeronfire@gmail.com. You can also find us on social media. By the way, we are on Stitcher, but we're also on Apple Podcast. We're on now on Spotify. You can get us on Spotify. My son had been after me, Ryan James Edwards, to get on Spotify. Well, we're on it. We're on Spotify, and we're on iHeartRadio. So you can find us on all these places and many, many more. And I cannot wait for you to hear Breah's this episode. Don't know when it's coming out, Breah. We're behind a little bit, and but eventually it will be on all those things, okay?
All right.
So adios, Youth Worker Nation. Say goodbye.
Bye, everybody.
All right, we're out. Thanks, guys.